Now, if you look at Australia, we have been going through a bit of a let's say a shake-up or a fallout of events, and I think it's been happening for a few years actually. Although it seems to be more recognised now. You know, people see events that they don't expect to cancel or go belly up, and I put it that. I've been in business long enough to have seen this happen before, that you've got to be pretty much out there delivering, you know, the best, and you can't be like anybody else. You can't buy the same talent that somebody else had at their event 6 months ago, because then you're no different than their event. You've got to be, and I'm saying that to Aussie Asians particularly all the time, like, I'm not buying your talent as they're playing every other festival. You know, like, make it special, brand it up special, and I'll pay you for that. You know, but it's not like, hey, I don't want to name an act, but you know, somebody goes, well, I'm about to do all the big day out shows, and you can't announce me till after big day out's played, but if you pay me $100,000, you know, I'll play Bluesfest. And it's like, you don't get it. You don't get it, guy, because you make these things special and you choose your event and you let that event be the thing that moves you to the next level. And so in Australia, in management, or in agents, I mean, I understand Australia only has X amount, 5 basic major cities, and you know, maybe 10 or 15 good secondary cities before you start getting into areas where there's not a lot of people living. And so the temptation is always to tour it. I want one, the musician wants to play, and two, he wants to make a living. But within that, and I know I'm going slightly off subject, but I'll bring it back, because what happens is the artist gets overexposed too quickly in this country of what is often one or two singles. And next minute, they don't really have that place in the pantheon, in the market here, where they have an ongoing career. Again, I don't want to name people, but you see it happen all the time. You know, after 1 or 2 records, they're struggling. They haven't got that second and third album, and then strategically booked themselves so that they are in demand. So for festivals, that's part of the art of booking, is you don't book the act that is playing everywhere. And for Australians, we need, as against me booking overseas talent, management really needs to find ways to get into other markets, other territories, so that the acts don't become overexposed and they've got other places they can go. And you look at great managers like Corinne with Cat Empire, or Phil Stevens with John Butler, how they've gone out there and they've built other markets. I mean, it makes me so proud to go to somewhere in Portland, Oregon, and go to a show and here's Johnny Butler played to 1,400 people. You know, as an Australian, and it's not London, you know, and all the Aussie mafia, you know, Commonwealth mafias showed up. You know, it's like, you go, there might be 6 Australians in the audience for an Australian act. I saw that happen last December in Portland, Oregon, at the Crystal Ballroom for Atlas Genius and Shepherd, and people knew the songs. You know, that makes you as an Australian go, it's a very humbling but proud moment. And that's what I'd like to see our government really realise more in their arts funding. And yes, I've gone off subject, and I'm sorry, but I better pull it back. But that's the stuff we need. You know, build acts so we can have long-term careers, so that guys like me are buying artists who are, or the public's going, I want to see that act. Not like, oh yeah, you just played Groove in the Moon, you just played Pyramid. I'm sorry Pyramid, you don't exist anymore. But that's important, and the same with internationals. You know, it's got to be the act that the people want to see and hear, and have a spread. And if we get it right, we have a career. And if we get it wrong more than a couple of 3 times, I'm sorry, but we're out the back door. That's the reality of our business. And there's people that have been in this business 30, 40, almost 50 years, and those people pretty much know a fair bit about the business. You can sit around and say to people in all areas of the business what it takes. You know, I mean, a guy like me, I come up as a musician, but after that, I used to go out and book halls and put on shows, and you know, I used to lecture set my own posters, go out at midnight and put them up around Sydney. This is what you can learn. I've been a bouncer. I was a lot smaller then, I wasn't a very good bouncer. You know, a tour manager, you know, a door booker, you know, booker of you do it all, and you learn it all, and you actually get good at it. And there's no real school that teaches you this business. You know, you just got to go out and do it and find a way to make a living at it, and it's bloody hard. You know, you'll be eating baked beans for a week some weeks, but but if you really care, I just think you end up in this point of going, I'm working the best business in the world because every day I can't wait to go out there and do it again and work with talented, creative people who want to work with me. I mean, how could it be better than that? So my long-winded Bluesfest answer is, yes, I don't always get the right talent for what I'd like to present, but I'm getting pretty good even when I mess up and somebody doesn't confirm or they decide not to come or we don't get a deal done, of having a whole lot of A, B, C, even D reserves I can pull in, and I still think I got some pretty good aces up my sleeve for Bluesfest in my next announcement, which is 2 or 3 weeks away.
And is that just on that same trail of thought? Is that already locked in, or will that change right up until the day, basically, with those?
Oh well, it's always partially locked in. I mean, generally the headliners take the longest. And sometimes they'll lead you right up the garden path, you know, right to the gate, and just as you're about to open it and corral them, they go, I've decided not to tour. And I'm like, are you effing kidding me? Like, and it does happen to all of us. And I mean, you know, the reason for all these well-programmed announcements is not always because the festival director is totally being the Svengali and pulling the strings. Sometimes we're getting the strings pulled on us. And then you've got to figure out how to untangle it and get that puppet dancing again. And yes, with Bluesfest, I'm not going to do an announcement until I've got every announcement at a point where I think it's got impact. And if that means I've got to wait a month, 6 weeks between them, you know, there'll always be X amount of acts, but it's always getting the big boys over the line. And I guess that's being brutally honest about our business, but I don't think that's any different. But if I had to go that every other festival director deals with, in the end, that announcement I've just done for Bluesfest to me is as good as any event anywhere, and I'll be putting icing on that cake, and then I'll be putting the cherry on top.
I guess.
So your question is a good one, but yes, there's still a few artists I've got to get confirmed, and I think I will. And often it gets down to, will I pay them what they want? And so that's dances happening too. We've all got it. In the end, it's a business, and you know we can all have an event where we, you know, but if we paid $10 million for the talent and only $8 million worth of people came in the door, well, that's not a good business model. So you've got to make all that work, and I don't think other people think that I can just pick up the phone and go, oh, Paul McCartney, how are you? Come on down, and they just don't get it. I mean, it took me 7 years to get Robert Plant to come. I haven't been able to present Dave Matthews, one of the top 3 to 4 grossing acts in America, since 2005. And you know, I got him to come and play Bluesfest twice for 2.5 hours each show, and everybody that knows Dave Matthews knows no 2 shows are the same. And it's one of the most musical bands anywhere. It's going to shift you if you've got ears that hear. And that's my job, and it's a beauty, but it's not always easy. And you don't always get what you want out of it. I mean, I lost a great band only yesterday morning, and you know what? I'm after another one by lunchtime.
Yeah,
that's my job.
I guess just finally, someone like Paul McCartney, is that someone you have been chasing for a little while?
No, I wouldn't think of chasing Paul because it would take such a slice out of our budget that we wouldn't be able to present a well-rounded event. So as much as I'd love to present him, he's really an artist that can only play the biggest events or needs to go out and tour on his own as a headliner. Bruce Springsteen's the same. I mean, they earn an amount of money that would mean that you couldn't book with me with 7 stages on the day. You wouldn't be able to present quality talent, a headline or sub-headline talent across the rest of your stages because all the money went to Bruce or Paul.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it is. And I mean, people think I could pick up the phone to Van Morrison and figure out how to get him on a plane. I mean, he hasn't got on a plane to Australia since 1987, and people still go, oh, why don't you get Van Morrison? Why don't you tell Tom Waits to come down? You know, I know the guy that puts on Tom Waits in London, and Tom doesn't like to play all that much, and he only likes to play theatres. And Tom said to Paul Charles, the guy that presents him there, well, I'll come and play London. I want to only play like a 2,500, 3,000 seater, I'm sorry, I don't quite remember which one, but how many shows should I do? And Paul said, well, I reckon you should do 20 and we'll sell out in 4 or 5 hours. And he said, well, let's do 3. Now that's what you deal with sometimes, you know? And because these artists don't mind playing a bit, but they don't want to overplay. I mean, try getting Raikuda to do a show. It's like, I try every year. And people go, well, why did you get Raikuda? What is something wrong with me? And I was like, of course I'm trying to get him. And dozens of others. You know, of course I go to Van every year, people, you know, will you get in the plane this year? And it doesn't happen, you know, but you've got to go out there and do that. There's acts that, I couldn't get Dr. John out last year or so on a big record that he had all of a sudden. And, oops, I've dropped it. But I'll have him out next year. Oops, haven't announced that one yet. But it's getting acts, they take years sometimes to get, you know, and might not be an absolute headliner, but if you're a Dr. John fan, you go like, oh, that's one of the acts I want to see, you know. And it's my job to present something for all facets of the Australian audience, and yeah.
Well, mate, I don't want to take.
So I gave you one.
Yeah.
That's what you wanted.
Yeah.
You know,
Wait
it wasn't
all day for
made.
that one.